From cereal boxes to 75B, the Airbnb survival story. In October 2008, while Wall Street crumbled and the global economy teetered on collapse, three broke roommates in San Francisco were about to become the poster children for startup desperation. Brian Chesky, Joe Gebbia, and Nathan Blecharczyk had maxed out their credit cards, accumulated $40,000 in debt, and watched their startup idea get rejected by investor after investor. Their platform for booking spare rooms had exactly 2 users, and their bank account was approaching zero. But instead of giving up, they did something so ridiculous, so absurdly creative, that it would become Silicon Valley legend. They designed, manufactured, and sold limited edition cereal boxes themed around the 2008 presidential election. Obama O's and Captain McCain's cereal boxes, sold for $40 each to political junkies and collectors, generated $30,000 in revenue and bought them just enough time to survive. Little did anyone know that this cereal box hustle would bridge the gap between bankruptcy and building the world's largest hospitality empire, worth $75 billion at its peak. The origin story of Airbnb begins not with a grand vision of disrupting the hotel industry, but with two broke design school graduates who couldn't afford their San Francisco rent. In September 2007, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia were struggling to pay their $1,800 monthly rent when they noticed that a major design conference was coming to town, leaving hotels completely booked. Instead of panicking about their financial situation, they saw an opportunity. They inflated 3 air mattresses in their apartment, created a simple website called Airbed and Breakfast, and offered visitors a place to sleep for $80 a night, complete with homemade breakfast and local networking opportunities. Their first 3 guests were a 30-year-old Indian man, a 35-year-old woman from Boston, and a 45-year-old father of 4 from Utah. Each paid the full $80, proving that strangers were willing to pay to stay in other people's homes. This wasn't just about cheap accommodation, Chesky realized. It was about authentic local experiences that no hotel could provide. The concept was born from necessity, but it revealed a fundamental truth about human nature that the entire hospitality industry had overlooked. By early 2008, Chesky and Gebbia had convinced their former roommate, Nathan Blecharczyk, a Harvard-educated engineer and serial entrepreneur, to join them as the technical co-founder. Blecharczyk had already built and sold a successful startup, but he was initially skeptical about the air mattress idea, calling it a niche market with limited potential. However, after seeing early user feedback and understanding the technology challenges involved in building a trusted marketplace, he agreed to build the platform in exchange for equity. The trio officially launched Airbnb in August 2008, timing their debut with the Democratic National Convention in Denver, where hotel prices had skyrocketed and availability was scarce. They managed to get 80,000 visitors to their website and facilitated 800 bookings during the convention week alone. The numbers looked promising, but when the convention ended, bookings dropped to almost zero. They had proven the concept worked during major events, but they couldn't figure out how to generate consistent demand during normal periods. Week after week, they would get maybe 1 or 2 bookings, barely generating enough revenue to keep the servers running, let alone pay themselves or their mounting personal expenses. The rejection phase of their journey was brutal and relentless. Armed with a basic pitch deck and their convention week success story, the founders approached investor after investor throughout late 2008 and early 2009, only to face a wall of skepticism and outright dismissal. Venture capitalists couldn't understand why anyone would want to stay in a stranger's home instead of a trusted hotel brand. They questioned the liability issues, the safety concerns, the quality control problems, and the fundamental market demand. One prominent investor told them the market size was too small because people would only use the service for major events like conventions, completely missing the broader vision of everyday travel. Another investor said the idea would never work because Americans were too paranoid about safety to sleep in strangers' homes. The rejection letters piled up, with investors citing everything from insurance concerns to the impossibility of scaling a business that required individual relationship building. Paul Graham from Y Combinator later admitted that even he initially thought Airbnb was a terrible idea, calling it one of the worst concepts he had ever heard pitched. The founders were turned down by virtually every major Silicon Valley investment firm, often multiple times, as they refined their pitch and desperately sought the capital needed to survive and grow. Facing imminent bankruptcy, and with their credit cards maxed out, the founders made a decision that would define their scrappy, never-give-up culture forever. During the height of the 2008 presidential election, They designed limited edition cereal boxes featuring Barack Obama and John McCain, complete with custom branding, politically themed cereal names, and collectible packaging. Obama O's featured the tagline, "The Breakfast of Change," while Captain McCain's promised a maverick in every bite. They convinced a Berkeley student to design the boxes for cheap, found a cereal manufacturer willing to produce small batches, and hand-assembled 1,000 boxes in their apartment. Priced at $40 each, the cereal boxes were marketed to political enthusiasts, collectors, and anyone who appreciated the absurdity of the concept. The Obama O's sold out almost immediately, while the Captain McCain's moved more slowly, ultimately requiring a post-election discount to clear inventory. The entire venture generated $30,000 in revenue, enough to keep them afloat for several more months and pay down some of their crushing debt. More importantly, the cereal box story became a powerful narrative about their resourcefulness and determination, impressing future investors who saw it as evidence that these founders would do whatever it took to survive and succeed. The breakthrough moment came in January 2009 when Paul Graham, despite his initial skepticism about the concept, invited them to join Y Combinator based purely on their impressive resourcefulness and determination. Graham later said he didn't invest in the idea, he invested in the founders, particularly after hearing about their cereal box hustle and seeing their refusal to quit despite endless rejections. Y Combinator provided them with $20,000 in funding and, more importantly, access to a network of mentors and potential investors who could help them refine their business model. During their 3 months in the accelerator program, they discovered that their biggest problem wasn't demand, it was supply and quality. People wanted to book unique accommodations, but hosts weren't creating compelling listings, and the photos were terrible. The founders personally visited New York City hosts, took professional quality photos of their spaces, and helped them write better descriptions. This hands-on approach improved booking rates dramatically, proving that the marketplace needed active curation and host education to succeed. They also implemented a review system that allowed both hosts and guests to rate each other, creating accountability and trust in a peer-to-peer transaction model that had previously relied purely on faith. The real turning point came with their Series A funding round in November 2010 when Greylock Partners led a $7.5 million investment that finally validated their vision at the institutional level. By this time, they had facilitated over 2 million nights booked, expanded internationally to 34,000 cities, and proven that people would use Airbnb for regular travel, not just special events. The funding allowed them to hire aggressively, improve their technology platform, and invest heavily in marketing and international expansion. They launched in London, Paris, and other major European cities, discovering that the concept worked even better in international markets, where travelers were more adventurous and hotel costs were higher. Their growth metrics became increasingly impressive, with nights booked growing from 50,000 in 2009 to 2 million in 2010 to 10 million in 2011. The network effects were powerful as more hosts attracted more guests, and more guests created demand that attracted more hosts. They also began expanding beyond spare rooms and air mattresses to include entire apartments, houses, and eventually unique properties like castles, tree houses, and private islands, transforming from a budget accommodation service into a comprehensive alternative to traditional hotels. The expansion phase from 2012 to 2015 was characterized by explosive international growth, aggressive market penetration, and the systematic dismantling of regulatory barriers in major cities worldwide. They raised increasingly larger funding rounds, including a $112 million Series B in 2011, $200 million in 2013, and $450 million in 2014, reaching a $10 billion valuation that made them one of Silicon Valley's most valuable private companies. Their growth strategy focused on launching in new cities, educating local hosts, and building relationships with government officials who were initially suspicious of their business model. In many cities, they faced significant regulatory pushes from hotel industry lobbying groups who argued that Airbnb hosts should be subject to the same taxes, licensing, and safety regulations as traditional hotels. Instead of fighting these requirements, Airbnb often embraced them, voluntarily collecting and remitting hotel taxes, implementing safety standards, and working with local governments to create fair regulatory frameworks. This cooperative approach helped them avoid the aggressive regulatory backlash that hurt other sharing economy companies like Uber in certain markets. By 2017, Airbnb had become a global phenomenon with over 3 million listings in 65,000 cities across 191 countries.
facilitating over 200 million guest arrivals since their founding. They had fundamentally disrupted the hospitality industry, forcing major hotel chains to reconsider their strategies and inspiring countless imitators worldwide. Their success had transformed entire neighborhoods, creating new income streams for homeowners, while also generating controversy about housing affordability and community character in popular tourist destinations. The company's valuation had reached $31 billion, making it worth more than established hotel chains like Marriott or Hilton, despite owning zero physical properties. They had survived the initial skepticism, the financial crisis, countless regulatory challenges, and intense competition to become the clear leader in the home sharing space. The three founders who once sold cereal boxes to pay rent had built a platform that was fundamentally changing how people travel, where they stay, and how they experience new cities and cultures around the world. The ultimate validation came with their public offering in December 2020, during the depths of the COVID-19 pandemic that had devastated the travel industry and temporarily crushed their business. Despite facing a 70% decline in bookings during the early months of the pandemic, Airbnb had adapted quickly, pivoting to promote longer term stays, remote work accommodations, and domestic travel as international tourism collapsed. Their IPO raised $3.5 billion, and the stock price more than doubled on the first day of trading, valuing the company at over $100 billion, and making it one of the most successful public offerings in Silicon Valley history. At the peak of their post-IPO momentum, Airbnb reached a market capitalization of $75 billion, representing a return of over 3 million% for early investors, and vindication for the founders who had been rejected by virtually every major venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. Brian Chesky, Joe Gebbia, and Nathan Blecharczyk had transformed from broke roommates selling novelty cereal boxes into billionaire entrepreneurs who had created an entirely new category of business, and fundamentally altered the global hospitality landscape. Their story became the ultimate Silicon Valley fairy tale, proof that with enough creativity, persistence, and willingness to do whatever it takes to survive, even the most ridiculous ideas can become world-changing empires.